Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. 2023. Author: Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance, United Nations Secretariat, New York. Email: trustfundsia@un.org. Website: https://conduct.unmissions.org/. The Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Administered by Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance. DMSPC, was created by the Secretary-General in 2016 to strengthen the response and support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Cover photo credit, Trust Fund Secretariat. Forward 1. Focus of the Trust Fund 2. Psychosocial support 2. Medical care 2. Income generation 2. Governance of the Trust Fund 3. Progress and changes to the approach of the Trust Fund 4. Trust Fund Projects 5. Impact 1-4. Financial Information 1-5. Funding 1-7. Learning from Experience 1-8. Way Forward and Strategic Direction 1-9. Table of Contents 1. 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Forward. I am pleased to introduce the 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, hereinafter, the Trust Fund, highlighting activities conducted in 2023. The report contains a financial overview for 2023 and it also underlines the new, more focused approach of the Trust Fund. In 2023, the Trust Fund continued the implementation of 8 projects, all in locations embroiled in political and security instability as well as environmental disasters, such as earthquakes and floods. Despite these conditions, the Trust Fund remained flexible and supported its implementing partners with consultations and guidance on mitigation measures for projects when these events occurred. Over the last year, the Review Committee met twice to review projects and to discuss the strategic direction of the fund, as well as the best way to utilize the very limited funds to ensure that victims are receiving the support they need. We aim to ensure that the Trust Fund addresses gaps in services and that the assistance and support provided is in line with victims' needs. As announced in the 2022 Trust Fund Annual Report, as part of its accountability mechanisms, the Trust Fund Secretariat increased its monitoring efforts in project locations through in-person visits. These monitoring visits had been affected due to travel restrictions during COVID-19. The visits allowed the Trust Fund Secretariat to see how projects are being implemented, to have a better oversight of what assistance is provided and to provide better guidance to the implementing partners, when needed. DMSPC is grateful to the 25 member states which support the Trust Fund and looks forward to continued contributions. Despite multiple funding appeals, the response has been muted, resulting in a financial challenge and in the Trust Fund's ability to continue implementation of its purpose through projects and supporting victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. The impact of Trust Fund projects is outlined in this report and underscores the importance of the continuation of this critical work, supported by member states and global and local partners. Our commitment to support victims of sexual exploitation and abuse must remain unwavering, and I look forward to continuing our partnership with member states on this important tool. Catherine Pollard, Under-Secretary General for Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance. Credit: UN. Photo: 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Focus of the Trust Fund. The Trust Fund, administered by DMSPC, was created by the Secretary-General in 2016 to strengthen the response and support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. The objective of the Trust Fund is to provide seed funds to address gaps in services for victims. Funding is provided to implementing partners including United Nations Secretariat entities, United Nations agencies, funds and programs, and non-governmental organizations to implement projects focused on psychosocial support. Psychosocial support such as psychological first aid, counseling, and referral to specialized mental health clinics is one of the services provided to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Victims also receive enhanced social support to facilitate their reintegration into their community ties, or through the provision of peer-to-peer support. Medical care. To address immediate needs, victims receive hygiene kits and other sanitary materials. They are also provided with medical care and treatment to address the consequences of sexual exploitation and abuse. Victims are referred to services such as HIV post-exposure treatment, post-exposure prophylaxis, and reproductive and sexual health care services. Income generation. Through participation in vocational training as well as training related to business and finance management, victims gain skills which enable them to start their businesses, sell their products, and generate income. It helps victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, who are often stigmatized by their families and community members and may be abandoned without support, to provide for themselves and their families. Through gaining new skills, Trust Fund project beneficiaries are empowered to become economically active and self-sufficient. This has contributed to supporting their dignity and rebuilding their self-esteem. 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Governance of the Trust Fund. 1. The Review Committee members are the Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance, USG as Chair, the Special Coordinator on Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, the Victims' Rights Advocate, Senior Managers from ACAR, UNICEF, UNDP, UNWomen, UNFPA, IOM, WHO, Development Coordination Office and the Department of Peace Operations. Administration, the Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance, DMSPC, is the Trust Fund. Implementing Office, IO. The Trust Fund Program Manager is the Conduct and Discipline Service, CDS. Located in the Administrative Law Division of the Office of Human Resources, DMPSC. It is also the Secretariat of the Trust Fund and its Review Committee. It monitors the status of projects and their performance indicators, ensures that disbursed funds are used in line with project proposals and reviews final expenditures for each project. in line with established procedures. The Trust Fund Certifying Officer is DMSPC Executive Office / Business Partner Service. The Trust Fund Review Committee 1 approves eligible proposals in accordance with the Trust Fund terms of reference and existing regulatory and program management frameworks. The Trust Fund Implementing Office consults with the Victims' Rights Advocate on eligible proposals prior to the meeting of the Review Committee. Members of the Review Committee are from Secretariat offices, departments and UN agencies, funds, and programs. The Victims' Rights Advocate is a Review Committee member and a key source of guidance on trust fund matters. Following Review Committee decision, a technical level working group, TLWG, was established to support review of the proposals and advise on the proposal's feasibility in the proposed locations. The technical level working group consists of a representative of each office centered in the Review Committee. Controller accepts pledges and controls funds. Program Manager conduct and discipline service in the DMSPC ensures that the trust fund is utilized for its purpose. Technical level working group chaired by CDS, comprises of representatives from UN entities with field experience, UN organizations and international and national partners, UN organizations and other international and local partners, coordinate and submit proposals. Implementing partners implement approved projects and deliver assistance and support services to beneficiaries. Certifying Office Business Partner Service in DMSPC ensures that expenditures are incurred in accordance with financial and staff regulations and rules. Disburse funds. Review Committee chaired by USG DMSPC, comprises of the OSCE Victims' Rights Advocate and key humanitarian development and peace operations entities, reviews and approves eligible proposals. Implementing Office for 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Progress and changes to the approach of the Trust Fund. 12 new projects were shortlisted by the Trust Fund Secretariat and the Victims' Rights Advocate and approved by the Review Committee in April 2023. New project agreements have been finalized and projects started in South Sudan, Haiti, DRC, and Guatemala. It is to be noted that since approval there have been some challenges that have prevented finalization of the administrative agreements for some of the 12 projects. For example, changes in the implementing partner's ability to deliver the project, difficulty verifying allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse in the project location, or concerns about capacity to monitor projects. With the evolution of the Trust Fund and lessons learned since its creation, the Review Committee also discussed the strategic direction of the Trust Fund in April and September 2023, including sustainability of the funding and the scope of the support provided by the Trust Fund. It was decided that due to its size and limited funds, in addition to the remaining gaps to address specific needs of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, moving forward the Trust Fund will focus on provision of Support to identified victims, as per the United Nations. Comprehensive strategy on assistance and support to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse by United Nations staff and related personnel, /res/62/214. Activities related to prevention such as community outreach and awareness which were previously funded would be more appropriately covered by the program. Matic funds of UN entities and NGOs who also work on preventing and addressing sexual exploitation and abuse. The review committee also endorsed the creation of a technical level working group to support the technical review of project proposals. Credit. Trust Fund. Secretariat. 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Trust Fund projects. 2 numbers of project beneficiaries mentioned under project objective sections are based on the approved project proposal. Those numbers might change. Decrease/increase, during the implementation phase of a project. Final number of project beneficiaries supported are reported once a project is completed. Note, project budgets and timelines are subject to change given the evolving situations where projects are being implemented and based on the identified needs. For example, security situation in a country can lead to additional funds being disbursed. During 2023, the Trust Fund implemented the following projects. Country: the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. Project name: Victim Assistance and Community Awareness Campaigns Against Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Project budget: $285,677. Funds disbursed: $142,838. Status: partially on hold. The project was initiated in August 2023 by Jeunes Solutions, JS, with the aim to empower victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and those exposed with vocational skills, profitable and sustainable livelihood, and ensure their reintegration into the community and their children born as a result of sexual exploitation and abuse. Main expected outputs, as per proposal to provide vocational training for 160 individuals in Uvira, Fizi and Kaberia. Provide school support for 30 children. Train 60 community-based complaint networks, CBCNs, on prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. This project is currently on hold due to operational delays and some challenges in verifying beneficiaries. Haiti. Comprehensive assistance for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and children born of sexual exploitation and abuse. Liberia. Vocational and entrepreneurial skills development in support to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse in Liberia, the Central African Republic. Realization of the rights of victims in the Central African Republic through provision of support and assistance. The Democratic Republic of the Congo. Projects: victim assistance and community awareness campaigns against sexual exploitation and abuse. Strengthen victims' rights to assistance and support, provision of comprehensive services for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Support to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse in the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan. Projects enhancing support for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse by providing timely, quality, and victim-centered services in Rubkana of Unity State, Malakal. Protection of civilians. Sites of Upper Nile State and Pibor of Jonglei State of South Sudan. Support to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse project in Northern Bahr el Ghazal State. 6. 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Project name, Strengthen Victims' Rights to Assistance and Support, provision of comprehensive services for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Project budget, $275,961. Disbursed, $275,961. Status, completed. Quote from a beneficiary. He used to give me money, food, etc. In exchange, I had sex several times with him. He got me pregnant, and a few months later, he left. Leaving me with the child, I started struggling to find food and money. It was not easy to send my child to school or feed him. I was trained in sewing in 2021, since then, I have support my child's schooling. After the training, I was integrated into another workshop, where I am now with a good coach. Thanks to this coach, I have improved my sewing skills, earning money to feed myself and my child. And I am respected in our neighborhood. Even people who were not speaking to me before are bringing me their clothes to sew. This is a significant contribution to my life. My sewing machine became everything to me. I protect it more than everything. I plan to pay for my child's schooling myself from next year, while waiting for MONUSCO to help us find the parents of our children, because, as well as education, we are told that our children also have the right to be connected to their father and to be assisted. The project was initiated in April 2022 by United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, with the aim to provide holistic support for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, and women and girls at risk in 4 humanitarian hubs: Northeast, Central East, Southeast and Kasai, with a high number of recorded sexual exploitation and abuse allegations, following the continued humanitarian presence and Ebola outbreaks. The project focuses on providing services in line with the rights and needs of sexual exploitation and abuse victims and children born as a result of sexual exploitation and abuse, including emergency and primary medical care, safe births, mental health, and psychosocial and reintegration support. Main expected outputs, as per proposal: provide 150 project beneficiaries with mental health and psychosocial support, MHPSS, and medical support. Provide 150 project beneficiaries with dignity kits. Train 80 key community stakeholders on psychology, CAL first aid, Increase knowledge and understanding of 100 local authorities and leaders have a better knowledge and understanding of sexual exploitation and abuse risks and know how to detect and support victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Provide 111 children with school kits. Project outputs. Over the course of the project, the following activities were implemented. 113 female sexual exploitation and abuse victims, and 56 children of sexual exploitation and abuse victims received emergency and primary medical care services. Some of the emergency issues include hospitalizations and surgeries for some victims and children. 5 sexual exploitation and abuse victims present in medical complications, including 2 childbirths, received medical support. 150 sexual exploitation and abuse victims received dignity kits. 120 children of sexual exploitation and abuse victims, 63 boys, 57 girls, received school kits. 339 psychosocial support services provided to sexual exploitation and abuse victims through individual and group counseling and support sessions. 46 follow-up visits conducted to sexual exploitation and abuse victims. 80 healthcare workers, 40 male, 40 female, were trained on holistic management of sexual exploitation and abuse victims. 7 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. 79 psychosocial staff, 23 male, 56 female, trained on mental health and psychosocial support to improve the mental health outcomes of sexual exploitation and abuse victims. 4 community dialogues held among local authorities and aid agencies to share findings from risk assessment and coordinate risk mitigation activities. This activity reached 117 participants, 72 male, 45 female. 157 local authorities and leaders, 91 male, 66 female. Trained on sexual exploitation and abuse, and capacity to detect and intervene in potential sexual exploitation and abuse cases within their communities. Quote from a beneficiary: I got pregnant by a man who worked for the UN. He denied the pregnancy and I had to report him before he accepted. Despite that, after his mission in the DRC, it wasn't easy for me to manage the pregnancy and the child. I went through a lot of difficulties. The health care of my children and myself have been taken care of thanks to the project. The project was successfully completed in October 2023, and it provided services based on the needs and wishes as much as possible, expressed by the project beneficiaries. Project name: Support to Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Project budget: $323,973. Funds disbursed: $323,973. Status: completed. MONUSCO, with support from an implementing partner, Samani Yomazinjara, Siam, launched the project in September 2022. The project aimed to support 382 beneficiaries, including 130 former beneficiaries who received vocational training as part of a previous trust fund project in the DRC. Main expected outputs, as per proposal. Organize vocational training in sewing, pastry making, and selling break for 160 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and women in vulnerable situations. Credit. UNFPA. 8 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Provide school fees and materials for 92 children born from sexual exploitation and abuse and other children in vulnerable situations and at risk of sexual exploitation and abuse. Train 130 former beneficiaries who received vocational training in the previous trust fund project in business skills, entrepreneurship, business plan, financial management, and strategies to increase their income and connect them with networks of existing business actors to support their efforts towards autonomy. Organize awareness campaigns on preventing sexual exploitation and abuse for CBCMs. Project outputs. Throughout the project, the following activities were implemented. 91 beneficiaries received 6-month training in sewing, including 20 in Beni, 15 in KVU, 10 in Uvira, 15 in Bujovu, 16 in Munigi, and 15 in Bunia. 83 beneficiaries received 4 months training in pastry making, including 18 in Beni, 15 in Bunia, 20 in KVU, 15 in Bujovu, 15 in Munigi. All beneficiaries were provided with starter kits. 124 children supported with school fees in 2022/23. Out of 124 children, 120 of them completed the school year. 16 children supported for school fees in 2023/24. 130 beneficiaries, who participated in a trust fund project in the past, were further supported with a training on business management. Conducted 70 community outreach sessions on prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse, reaching overall 1,324 individuals. As a result of the income generation activities, based on surveys conducted by the implementing partner, the average income of each beneficiary increased to $48, comparing to $17 per month prior to start of the project. Project beneficiaries were also connected with local businesses to provide them with coaching opportunities. The project was completed in November 2023. Credit. Trust Fund. Secretariat. 9 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Country. Haiti. Project name, Comprehensive Assistance for Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse and Children born of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Project budget, $340,000. Funds disbursed, $170,000. Status, in progress. In August 2023, a trust fund project was launched in Haiti, led by the International Organization for Migration, IOM. Despite continued political instability and unstable security situations, the one-year project aims to provide comprehensive assistance to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse in Haiti. Main expected outputs, as per proposal. Provide services and support to meet some of basic needs, medical, psychological, nutritional, educational, housing, life-saving, of 40 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. The support includes monthly non-monetary contributions of food, annual contribution to mothers/caregive, as to enable 48 children to attend school during 2023/24. Provision of life-saving support. This includes housing support and rental subsidies, housing, evaluation and transportation to the house. Provide vocational training to 40 beneficiaries in income-generating activities, IGA, and financial management in form of in-kind contributions for the start of their businesses. Project progress. Over the course of the project, the following activities were implemented. 41 children, 20 girls and 20 boys, have been supported with payments for the school fees and school-related expenses such as school books, backpacks, funding for a tutor. 33 women, as part of the food assistance, received a monthly stipend. 7 beneficiaries were provided with individual counseling. 16 women developed their individual business plan, with remaining plans to be developed within 2024. 40 beneficiaries and their children were provided with monthly health insurance. The security situation remains challenging in Haiti, affecting the timeliness and the scope of the provided support. All efforts are made to ensure successful project implementation. Country: Liberia. Project name: Vocational and Entrepreneurial Skills Development in Support to Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse in Liberia. Project budget: $297,433. Funds disbursed: $297,433. Status: completed. In March 2022, USCO launched its second project. Funded by the Trust Fund, the aim of the project was to empower up to 200 individuals, including those who benefited from the first Trust Fund project focused on literacy and numeracy, to acquire marketable skills that enable them to provide for themselves and their families. Main expected outputs, as per proposal: train 200 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, and those at risk in tailoring and design, pastry making and catering, soap making and dyeing, and cosmetology. Provide psychosocial support to project beneficiaries. Organize a 2-month internship for at least 50% of the project beneficiaries. Participation in the internship will be voluntary. Support 120 trainees from the soap making and pastry track in starting their small businesses. Train 200 project beneficiaries in business management. 10 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Project outputs. Over the course of the projects, the following activities were implemented. 220 completed 7 months long vocational training, including but not limited to pastry making, catering, soap making, fashion design and cosmetology. 220 beneficiaries were provided with starter kits. 15 women participated in individual counseling sessions. Due to the nature of the local market, initially planned internships did not work out. As an alternative, Benefy series were provided with home assignments to ensure they improve their skills at their own pace with the project. Coordinators informally checking on their progress. The project was completed in August 2023. Country: South Sudan. Project name: Enhancing Support for Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse by providing timely, quality and victim-centered services in Rubkana of Unity State, Malakal Protection of Civilian Sites of Upper Nile State and Pibor of Jonglei State of South Sudan. Project budget: $337,872. Funds disbursed: $337,872. Status: completed. In May 2022, the implementing partner, United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, launched a trust fund project in South Sudan aiming to provide direct, specialized services for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, and those in vulnerable situations in Rubkana, Malakal, Posi and Pibor. Main expected outputs, as per proposal: provide 60 sexual exploitation and abuse victims and members of the communities affected or at risk of sexual exploitation and abuse with access to social, legal services and medical support. Provide 60 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and members of the communities affected or at risk of sexual exploitation and abuse with materials such as clothing, sanitary and hygiene products, and transport. Facilitation to meet the most immediate varying needs. Repair 3 existing women and girls friendly spaces, WGFSs, structures, fix broken doors, windows, and leaking roofs, and replace damaged chairs, tables, and mats. Train 60 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and members of the communities affected or at risk of sexual exploitation and abuse in hairdressing, knitting, beading, baking, bread making, tea/coffee making. Provide project beneficiaries with income generation activities and starter kits such as hairdressing, knitting and beading, baking, bread making, tea/coffee making. Assist with establishing local coffee shops by providing materials, for example, an umbrella for shade, chairs, tables, cups, sugar, tea/coffee, and training on aspects of coffee making, including hygiene. These activities will be implemented in the WGFS. Train 3 CBCN's groups on the prevention of the sexual exploitation and abuse and reporting. Project accomplishments. Over the course of project, the following activities were implemented. 37 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse assessed specialized and victim-centered approach. Credit. Deng. Ajin. 11 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Psychosocial Support, PSS, and Legal Counseling Services. 31 beneficiaries received medical support. 135 participated in income generation activities such as beading, basket making, bedsheet embroidery and tie. Lawing, producing necklaces, bangles, tea shops, small shops and bread making / baking. The vocational training activities were selected by beneficiaries themselves. 135 beneficiaries were supported with dignity kits, consisting of inner and outer clothing, a sanitary pad, soap, hand torch etc. Repaired, maintained, and furnished 3 existing WGFSs in Malakal, Bentiu, and Pibor. Constructed a new WGFS in Malakal which ensures the privacy, safety, and confidentiality of the victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, women and girls at risk of sexual exploitation and abuse, and other vulnerable members of the community. 3 community-based complaints mechanism networks were supported. 57,697, 33,754 female, 23,943 male, have been reached through various awareness-raising activities focused on sexual exploitation and abuse prevention, risk mitigation, and reporting mechanisms. The project was completed in August 2023 following provision of specialized psychosocial support, medical care, and legal counseling to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, those at risk of sexual exploitation and abuse as well as children born as a result of sexual exploitation and abuse in Upper Nile Malakal, Unity State Bentiu and Jonglei State Pibor. The project established women and girls-friendly space in Malakal as well as strengthened the referral pathway to sexual exploitation and abuse services and coordination mechanism. Quote from a beneficiary: "Before this support was provided to me, I had no source of income and was always depending on others. Now, I am able to gain my own source of income which builds my confidence in feeding my children and covering my other costs." Credit. Trust Fund. Secretariat. 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Project name: Support to Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse Project in Northern Borough El Ghazal State. Project budget: $254,154. Funds disbursed: $254,154. Status: ongoing. In June 2023, the Trust Fund signed an agreement with Community Initiative for Partnership and Development (CIPAD) for a new project in South Sudan. The project is being implemented in Northern Borough El Ghazal State. Main expected outputs, as per proposal: provide livelihood support to 58 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse in order to increase their sources of income and strengthen their livelihood capacity. Provide awareness raising to 360 community members and victims of sexual exploitation and abuse of their rights and reporting mechanisms. Provide psychosocial services to 58 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Referral to services of 58 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Establish at least 12 volunteer community social support groups and train them to provide free psychosocial support services to the victims of Sexual exploitation and abuse in the communities. Project progress. During the reporting period, the following activities were implemented. 8 community outreach meeting with 240 participants, 118 females and 122 males, were conducted in Malakal Boma of Neokawani Payam and Wath Muick Boma of Wath Muick Payam in Awale South County. 12 community engagement meetings were organized to establish community volunteer psychosocial support groups at different locations of Northern Borough El Ghazal State in order to enhance social support services for the victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. 58 beneficiaries were provided with livestock, 5 goats each, as well as bags of maize flour, cartons of soaps, sets of bed sheets, beads and goats, which has enhanced their social and economic resilience. Capacity. 58 beneficiaries were trained on basic business management and animal husbandry skills. Quote from a beneficiary: "When I joined the training, all I wanted to do was to be able to complete everyday sewing tasks at home to produce skirts, blouses, and other clothes that would allow me to earn a little money for my daughters' survival. However, I feared this could not be translated into reality, especially when I saw many colleagues with poor education and their behaviors. But as the days progressed, I enjoyed attending the classes, where we received almost individual attention. I learned new sewing and clothing making techniques I knew nothing about sewing. Now, I know how to use sewing machines and different sewing techniques. I produce custom-made pants, skirts, blouses, and other products without problems. Some people began to request my service in the neighborhood. Last week, I sewed for 3 of my neighbors' children. I earned 2,500 FCFA per outfit. That's already a plus for the month. Because before, I didn't even have an activity to give me 1,000 FCFA. I want to earn more after the training and receiving my kits. Thank you again for this work that you have just given us." 13 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Country: the Central African Republic. Project name: Realization of the Rights of Victims in the Central African Republic through provision of support and assistance. Project budget: $251,168. Funds disbursed: $214,663. Status: ongoing. In 2022, the Review Committee approved a new project to support victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and children born as a result of sexual exploitation and abuse in the Central African Republic. MINUSCA, with support from an implementing partner Ngeti Batangoyi. So Ngoroi, NBY, is implementing the project in 3 areas: Alindao, Mobe and Pombalo. Main expected outputs, as per proposal: train 120 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and at risk of sexual exploitation and abuse in Alindao, and 100 victims of sexual exploitation and abuse and at those at risk in Mobe and Pombalo. In soap making, pastry, sewing, hairdressing, agriculture, and animal husbandry. Provide educational support to 34 children born of sexual exploitation and abuse. Refurbish a school in Pombalo. Increase capacity of the local community prevention and response network, LCPRN, on prevention and response to sexual exploitation and abuse. Project progress. 220 beneficiaries provided with vocational training in soap making, pastry making, hairdressing, sewing, and agriculture. 20 children provided with educational support. 128 school desks provided to the Pombalo Primary School. Poor infrastructure affected the implementing partners' ability to provide the needed materials to the project. Locations. Due to logistical challenges, the project was extended and is expected to finish in the second quarter of 2024. Credit. Trust Fund. Secretariat. 14 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Impact. Number of countries. 58. 1,642. 58,366. Number of projects. Number of direct beneficiaries. 4 projects in 2023. Number of indirect beneficiaries. Haiti, Liberia, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of the Congo. An indirect beneficiary is someone who is not directly connected with a project but will still benefit from it. For example, community members who have benefited from awareness-raising activities. 15 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Financial information. List of the 25 member states which provided contributions to the Trust Fund and payments withheld from troop and police contributing countries as a result of substantiated allegations, from March 2016 to April 2024. It is to be noted that these are all contributions received and much has been disbursed or committed as per the table below. Country received. Albania $2,000, Nepal $15,000. Australia $153,374, Nigeria $100,000, Bangladesh $148,182, Norway $393,377, Bhutan $10,000, Pakistan $10,000. Canada $240,964, the Philippines $25,000, Cyprus $18,067, Portugal $82,383, Ecuador $1,000, Slovakia $46,333, Finland $59,242, Sri Lanka $10,000, Germany $120,000, Switzerland $92,000, India $100,000, Uganda $10,000, Italy $581,818, United Kingdom $1,117,318. Japan $200,000, United States of America $620,000, Luxembourg $50,000. Total $4,206,058. Withheld payments to troop and police contributors as a result of substantiated allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse. $935,001. Overall total $5,141,059. 16 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Summary of all funds disbursed between 2017 and April 2024. Contributions received since 2016 $4,206,058. Payments withheld from troop and police contributing countries as a result of substantiated allegations. $935,001. Total $5,141,059. Funds disbursed /committed between 2017 and April 2024 for projects: the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Central African Republic, Liberia, Haiti, and funds committed for ongoing projects: $4,792,467. Projected balance $348,591. 17 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Funding. The Trust Fund portfolio, since its establishment, includes voluntary contributions from 25 member states. Contrib. UTAs are listed in the Financial Information section on page 14, in the amount of over $5.1 million, including $983,129 representing payments withheld following substantiated allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse by United Nations personnel. Contributions to the Trust Fund can be made by governments, intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations, private institutions, or individuals. Following the successful implementation and launch of 20 projects, the Trust Fund has a remaining balance of $359,776. In response to the limited funding, the Secretariat has made numerous appeals for voluntary financial contributions to the Trust Fund and has sought to raise $3 million in 2024. So far, it has received $55,000 in voluntary financial contributions in 2024. To contribute to the Trust Fund, visit https://www.un.org/preventing-sexual-exploitation-and-abuse/content/donate-trust-fund, or contact us on trustfundsia@un.org. Credit. Trust Fund. Secretariat. 18 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Learning from experience. Key takeaways. The Trust Fund has received a large number of proposals from peacekeeping, development, and humanitarian actors over the past years. The limited funding is the key challenge affecting the Trust Fund's ability to fund projects and for much needed support to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Following the COVID pandemic, the Trust Fund Secretariat restarted monitoring visits to the projects. Monitoring of the projects allows the Trust Fund Secretariat to see the progress of projects firsthand and provide better guidance to implementing partners and to address concerns that might arise. The Review Committee plays a crucial role in providing strategic direction for the Trust Fund. A technical-level working group was created and met in October 2023 to support revision of the trust fund mandate, which was then endorsed by the Review Committee. As the trust fund aims to address gaps in services, implementing partners are requested to include an exit strategy for the project and emphasize how the project will assist beneficiaries in having sustainable support beyond the life of a project. The trust fund liaises with UN focal points, conduct and discipline teams, senior victims' rights officers, and victims' rights focal points, PSEA coordinators. PSEA networks as examples, in the field to gather feedback and verification at an early stage of proposal review. This facilitates a consultative process, including stakeholders who would have accurate information from the locations of projects. Credit. Trust Fund Secretariat 2023 Annual Report of the Trust Fund in Support of Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Way Forward and Strategic Direction. The Trust Fund aims to assist victims of United Nations personnel across the entire UN system through specific projects that address the most critical needs and gaps in services. With the more focused approach, the Trust Fund works closely with implementing partners and UN entities to ensure that funds are used for services to provide assistance and support directly to victims, providing the limited funds available to where they are needed most. The priorities for 2024 include: continue fundraising efforts to ensure trust funds ability to address gaps in services for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, conduct regular project monitoring visits, subject to availability of funding, consider support for expanded vocational training areas based on needs and availability in the country / project locations targeting skills that are more sustainable in local communities. Research other modalities to provide funding more efficiently, for example, through grants in addition to project proposals. Continue collaboration with the Office of the Victims' Rights Advocate and senior victims' rights officers on mapping gaps in services and specialized projects, and in improving and implementing methodologies to seek feedback from beneficiaries. Collaborate with communications teams in the Department of Peace Operations and the Department of Global Communications to strengthen awareness raising on trust fund projects and impacts on beneficiaries. Disseminate information on the impact of the trust fund and voices of beneficiaries through the trust fund website, social media campaigns and various United Nations and member states events. Credit. Trust Fund Secretariat. Copyright symbol 2024 United Nations. All rights reserved.